Right, so I'm Sam from Sheridan Computers. We've got kind of somewhat of a celebrity on with us today. We've got Tom Lawrence.
Thank you for having me. I don't know if I'm a celebrity yet. I'm just some person on YouTube who likes nerding out and talking tech.
What are you up to now on subscribers?
I think 220,000, somewhere around there. Yeah, 200 and almost 221,000. So I just hit refresh on the page.
A lot of work and goes into that, and I can see, like, obviously you're on it 2, 3 videos, 4 videos a week, just all the time.
Yeah, that goes to the obsessive nature of me of getting content out there and things like that. I don't know if it's a healthy recommendation I'd make to anyone, but it's a great outlet for me and creativity that I want to get out there. So talking nerd stuff and tech things.
Yeah, I had problems doing it, like fitting the family in and stuff, but we're going to ask you the same things in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously I run a managed service provider or IT consultancy. I'm not keen on the MSP word. Tom does the same thing, but he's based across the world in the States.
Yes. Yeah, and me and you just kind of go back and forth occasionally. We actually have a lot of the same thought processes of how we run a business, and we've just connected and kind of go back and forth and talking on LinkedIn. Usually, I think it's just a primary way we end up having conversations. But yeah, so he asked if he could interview me, and I said, hey, why not? Because I told him the YouTube thing is not a bad idea. So Sam's getting started in it too. So this is.
Yeah, I have to say thank you for that, because obviously someone that's running such a popular channel with like 200 subscribers or something. Like me interviewing, I've got 3, and people are probably like, who's that? So we've both been running a business about the same amount of time, I think.
Okay.
And I think we're even similar age. I'm in my 40s, and I think I started, I can't remember, 2001, 2002.
Same here.
Doing it that long, can't even remember when it was.
Yeah. So, you're like my, that same similar scenario. We both started specifically, when did I start my business was 2003. So, and I don't remember how old I was. I know how old I am now. So at the math it backwards, since I'm 46 now. So I have to reverse that out to whatever, that's how old I was in 2001. Think about that a minute. So 26.
Yeah. That kind of puts us in the same category, and we've both been doing it like 20 years or so. So got a lot of experience in it. I've been talking to a lot of other IT guys about this recently, actually, about how long they've been going and the new guys coming into the industry and stuff, and people feeding them the wrong way with information on what you should be doing. And I saw one of your videos this morning, actually, on should you raise your prices?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. I definitely. It's one of those things. I mean, I don't charge the same prices as I did 20 years ago, and prices are different now than they were a year ago. So you have to compensate for it. Employees just kind of expect to make more money going forward as they learn, as they level up skills, as more responsibilities are added to them. It's kind of just a progression of things, of how things move forward. And you have to reflect that in a reasonable and well-communicated way with your clients. That is something we reiterated heavily in that particular video about raising prices. It is a very much well-documented, communicated process with your clients. It makes everyone a little bit more comfortable.
It is. And obviously you've got to pay for your staff, and you've got bills to pay for, and the training and everything that you're saying, really. So you can't expand if you don't pay for staff and take new staff on as well.
Exactly.
So we've established the when you started. Then you said in 2003. What made you start it?
What made me start my business? That's always a fun one. And I don't know that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm more the side of the unwilling entrepreneur. And I say it like that because I was happy just working in tech. The problem becomes when the ground from under you gets shifted because of decisions made by the people that employ you. The people that employed me at the time had made some rather unsavory business decisions that ultimately led to their bankruptcy and an investigation by IRS, the tax authority that is in the United States. So I don't know if I can ever share the full story of all the shenanigans, but there was enough shenanigans that the IRS was involved, the tax authorities, and just trying to sort everything out. And I decided at that point, as it was a great job I had working in corporate IT, I decided, this company's getting split up into multiple pieces. Why don't I turn them into my client, just kind of make a run at it for myself. So a lot of the why is so I could take more control and have autonomy over myself to some extent. And they turned into my first client. So, which was an unstable proposition, by the way. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything other than, well, I guess I got a client now that does seem to spend some money with me, but obviously that not necessarily the most stable solution as a regular paycheck. There's a lot of risk. Maybe I was either naive and didn't think about the risk enough. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a bunch of money in the bank. Matter of fact, to keep my business going, I mostly liquidated things I sold assets that I had acquired, like things and stuff, and leveraged a loan against my house just to keep the business afloat while I try to figure out how to have a business. Probably not the best approach, but out of desperation, I kind of figured a lot of things out.
Have it easy.
Yeah, there's a lot to starting it, and I kind of learned the hard way on it. So I don't preach like it's a solution. Entrepreneurship is a solution to all your problems necessarily. It is the beginning of many different problems, though.
So I was going to say, like, how many staff did you start with in that? So it was obviously just you then, because you've had quite a hard start.
So just me, but the use of contractors. So directly, no staff. But one of the things I had curated as a corporate IT manager was a good list of contractors and vendors. And they liked working with me because we always made sure we paid their bills on time. We always treated them really well and gave them fair prices for the work they did. So those contractors were still saved phone numbers in my phone. I still had all those contacts. So right away, as I started to grow things, in matter of fact, as that person who was managing those the breakup of the company split it up into a couple clients for me. I right away used those same contractors when I needed to get things done and maintain those relationships. That was really key because finding an employee is hard because you have to pay them in a very regular way. When you have contractors, you can pay them on an as needed, and you're not their only source of income. So they're taking up slack where there's projects to be done while they do their other projects, because they were like wiring vendors, programmers, and other people I had. So it made it kind of easy. I didn't actually have employees until from 2003 when I launched. My first employees weren't until 2005. So it actually took a couple of years of just using outside contract work before I did it. And it was kind of slow. Yeah, it was kind of slow before I got the employees. So it's not like I had them on day one. I just had the contractors available, which is very helpful.
Yeah, you still use contractors now, don't you? I mean, we do. Like you say, finding staff is hard work, and we've gone through quite a few staff who come up and say they've worked at large companies, they're really good, and then you put them on the tools and they just struggle, and you try and help them, talk them through it, and some are just really awkward to get going. And we've gone through quite a few staff really to find the right ones. So we're in a good position now with our staff where they're kind of all self-sufficient and can just do things without me getting involved.
Yeah.
So that's all the good things. So how many people have you got working for you now?
Right now there are 8 of us that are direct employed, and the rest are contractors. And we use a lot of outside companies as contractors, partnering with even other IT firms as needed. So the only people on my direct payroll right now are that, because we just, you can manage with the right tooling and everything else, a pretty large customer base, provided everything's set up right through all the automation and RMM tools we use. So we haven't had to have a massive staff to do what we do. You have to have a lot of really solid, efficient processes. And when you have a smaller staff, it's actually a little easier for me, because a lot of our work is still, the majority of our income comes from consulting work. And I say consulting, someone may use the word break fix, kind of that one-off, but some of the consulting projects, I mean, these engagements can be quite large for us, where they need redesign of their network, redesign of infrastructure at a larger company, and say, all right, can you be part of us helping that? And because a lot of times we're offering the consulting then to a larger team to do the physical hands-on, that's great. We actually, we had a company that had to migrate 2,100 servers. 7 people can't migrate 2,100 servers. But the larger company just needed some consulting to understand the aspect of what needed to be done, confirm the process of how to migrate with, it was TrueNAS and XCP&G they were using. Once they understood the process, they had a bigger team internally, so they paid us for our consulting time and internal. This is that weird mix of people say, you seem too small to be able to work on a project like that. I'm like, well, it's how you define the work on that project. When you consult with someone to do the work, and you're doing like not necessarily the actual work, but the design and planning and thinking about the work, then you can work with these other teams, internal IT teams, to get the work done. I think you've done some of this too. You had a project me and you talked about with, I think it was a lot of Cisco equipment. You were upgrading a very large facility too. So
yeah, I did. I picked a couple of colleges up over here that wanted some work doing. I was can't go into what it was, but I picked that up straight through YouTube. I'm Googling something, came across it and went, oh, can you do it for us? And as you say, the guy that got in touch with me was actually a really nice guy, and he'd been doing IT for like 20 years or something, knew his stuff a lot. He just wasn't, he didn't want to just put some kit in that he'd not dealt with before.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the specialization comes in IT. It's so much, one of the important aspects people don't realize is our industry, as it's matured, has become very, in some ways, similar to the way the medical industry works, where we don't just have a doctor. And you go back to the early history. I know here in the US, barbers and doctors were kind of one and the same. The guy who cut your hair would also, treat you and bandage you up a little bit. Now we have a specialist for everything. We have your general practitioners, and then it narrows down. So, and IT is much the same. We have someone who's niched into the network engineering, niched into database management, and it just being able to coordinate with all these people. Just because you have an internal IT team for a college, they're probably really well versed in the line of business application that manages the college, less well versed in something that has a 5-7 year life cycle, like the network back end. They're like, well, we knew it was good 5 years ago. We put it in, it's aging. We want to replace it. So let's call in some experts, because maybe this is, or maybe this isn't the best solution. And so finding someone who has expertise in that, it's just kind of the way our whole industry matures. So yeah, we all get specialization now.
Yeah, they was really knowledgeable in what they do. They're using mainly Cisco gear.
Yeah.
And what they know about Cisco made me look like I didn't have a clue, and I had no idea about IT in any way whatsoever. They were really knowledgeable on that respect of things. Going back to the number of staff you've got, with having 8 people, I wouldn't say that's a small amount of people for a IT company to have. We've got 5, but know there's many that do it with like 2 and 3. We use a lot of contractors for cabling and stuff. Managing machines is quite easy, other than Windows updates, of course.
Yeah.
But we was using Enable. I'm still using it at the moment. I'm not getting into that. That'll be a completely separate video.
Yeah. We'll have we will do a topic on that together.
Yeah. So we use that to manage machines. If we need to install Huntress, for example, that we were talking about earlier, I'd literally just run a script and it installs it right across the board, across every single machine that we look after. So that kind of cuts down the number of staff you need straight away.
Absolutely.
So back to you starting up, because I know a few people are interested in this, and you've mentioned a lot of this quite freely through your videos, which is why I'm asking. How long was it before you started making a profit then, if you'd sacrificed all the assets off? And
there was a lot of losses over years, and then there was a lot of break evens. So it's kind of fuzzy, because the business structure that I'm structured as is referred to as S Corp here in the United States. Being an S Corp, you actually can lose money, but still pay yourself and payroll. So I put myself on payroll in the early days as part of my corporate tax structure. So I always paid myself a wage, be it not near what my market value, at least my percent. Hell, let's say this way. I made substantially less than I was making in corporate IT. So a wage, I'm not going to necessarily call it a great wage, but I was making money out of the company from that aspect. But the company itself still was taking some losses. And in order to fund the company and its losses, you liquidate assets and you give loans to your company, essentially. So it was quite a number of years before I would say it was really profitable. But it was more of a sustainability thing of just keeping it going. And the bleed rate wasn't too bad after probably 2 years, where I started to feel a little bit more comfortable with anything. It didn't really, it took only in the last few years where I would say we're very comfortably profitable on things, and we're actually making a much better margin. That's happened over the last 5 years, a lot better than the first number of years. I also had lots of little hiccups in life and segues and distractions where I did other things. Like I was in the business, but I was also like, what if I was going to go do this? And small segue, for example, I was a wedding photographer for a number of years because I thought that was kind of fun. And it has nothing to do with technology. It was just a lot of fun that I did. But it obviously a big time in my life, I didn't focus on the business. I just kind of let the contracts roll and things kind of happen. So it was interesting, some of the things that happened in between.
It's funny you mentioned the photography stuff, and I've heard you mention it before. I bought a camera to do some professional shots for a website, and I just couldn't figure out how to use it. Paid like £800 for a camera or something, like $900 or something. And then I just switch it on, point and click. I might as well just bought one of them £1 ones off the market or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's always interesting to have a conversation about how people started and before they started making money and stuff, because I know a lot of people are interested in getting into tech and starting companies up and doing stuff. Because myself, when I did it, what say it was 2001, 2002 when we started, it was probably about 2005 before it stopped becoming a problem and you had a bit of money coming in and you could live properly and back to normal as much as normal is.
Yeah.
And it was probably about 2007 before it actually started taking off and becoming okay. And then even that's probably since about 2012 since we've got comfortable out of it. So it does take a long while to build a tech business up.
Oh yeah.
You say and most of us will say it that have been doing this for so long. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You can be the best engineer in the world, and
yeah,
if you don't know anyone and you've got no one that'll take you on to fix the computers, you're gonna struggle.
And so I'm reading through the questions here, and one of the questions is, how many hours do we work? One thing I will tell people about that, because before I get to the next question is, that's up to you. I don't think there's a formula that works. I know people that work less hours that have had more success than me. I work the hours that I'm comfortable working, which is actually quite a bit. I'm up early. I stay up late. I'm very passionate about technology, but I don't recommend it as a lifestyle choice because it's certainly not for everyone. And so that's my comment on that. But kind of back to who you know, because that actually brings me into the next question, which I do have a little bit more to say, is how do you market your business and which tactics have been most successful? I see that question in there. And very much who you know and expanding your friend circle is huge. I chat with a lot of not just people in the UK that run tech businesses, but also people in America. Matter of fact, let's get narrowed down. I have numerous friends within 10 miles of me that own IT companies that I engage with. We have gotten business, matter of fact, some big projects given back and forth between them. We even referred them over something that was just not our niche, but we knew they niched into. Having that friend circle is huge. It is a lot about who you know. And people go, I don't know anyone. Well, that's how we all start out. And knowing people is big. Just get out there and meet them. Even if you think they're competitors or actually people that are very relatable, you can start having a conversation with them. You'll find that can be a very big thing to increasing that circle. Besides that, tactics that really work for us, we have the Chamber of Commerce, and several other business professional organizations for entrepreneurs. Joining those, going to events, meeting with, and not being salesy, just going and meeting with, maybe do some hobby with them together. I'm not big on golf. I know that's popular with over here with other entrepreneurs, but golfing is an example. If you're into that, whatever those things are, when you kind of have some shared common ground with other entrepreneurs, you kind of expand out that friend circle. And the old adage of people buy from people they like. If they first start with liking you, they might even ask, what do you do for a living? Because if you don't lead with what you do for a living, go out there and kind of just have conversations with people. It makes your life a lot better. It's still, even if you're not going to do business with them, just go out there and be social and go to these events and talk about, start with the weather. I don't know. Because no one really wants to hear about deeply technical things that don't work in it. So, and just get to know people. It really is a big asset for when you're doing the B2B style work. For retail, you could throw out there Google ads and everything else. You want to draw the general public in. That's fine. I think me and you are a little bit different here in the terms of like, we're focused on the B2B side of things. And when you're focused on that, that really does come down to your having a good, strong list of connections and making sure those are things you're curating all the time. And even I don't say, oh, I've reached this level of success, I've got this thing and I'm happy. I still spend a lot of time. Matter of fact, I free up time sometimes to go to business professional events all the time so I can hang out with more people, so I can keep having conversations and meet new people. It's just kind of a cool thing.
You have to keep doing it.
Yeah. It's a persistent thing that really matters a lot with business. I'd say it's huge to not just your success of your business, but also helps with your psychological well-being. Talking with other entrepreneurs or sometimes ranting with them, take your pick. But somehow that is therapeutic and helpful too. So
yeah, I suppose it helps as well that once you start getting on about IT, it's kind of hard to keep you quiet about it.
Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, the only things I do really are business events such as the Chambers of Commerce and things. I did try BNI, but it didn't really work out for me. It was just not what a...
Yeah, BNI is hit and miss. It depends on the group you join. I didn't realize they had it over there. It's really popular here. some BNI have been terrible. Some BNI are okay. If you find one that's not right, maybe try a different one. No guarantees that even the next one will be good, but sometimes people have found some. I have a friend, he's doing a lot of work for specifically a large nationwide chain that all started, he literally will tell you, BNI is where he found this one, and then they liked him so much they introduced him to corporate. Now he's got all the stores across the US. Like he's like, yeah, he's like, he's like, it was just great. I was in the right place, right time. Everything worked out well. And they were some nice people I got to meet. So it's not, it keep trying different things. That's what I can say for stuff like that.
Yeah. You can't walk into a room and expect to walk out with a client.
Right.
But if you keep walking into rooms, then you will do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What do you have next? Have you ever turned down a client?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's unfortunate. I have a video called "We Fired a Client" or something like that on my channel. I can't remember the exact title, but if you typed in "fired," you'd probably find it. We've had times where sometimes from the start or sometimes after engagements with them, we decide I've had enough of them. It's one of those things. It becomes easier and easier to do as your company gets bigger. It's harder and harder to do for example, one of the people I know, they receive 80% of their revenue right now from a client they hate. So they're at a tight spot because they have several employees, but majority of their revenue comes from it. And they're like, we can't even sustain our employees if we lose this client. So we kind of deal with it. That's a situation that's not necessarily good. It's one of the reasons you should be focused on growth and not have too much, because we used to joke about this. I was IT manager for a transportation company. Our primary client that represented 92% of our revenue was Ford Motor Company. And we used to joke, if Ford gets a cold, we get the flu. I mean, when Ford had any problems, we immediately downstream of that felt it. So diversity really helps with that, giving you the flexibility to deny one. But there's times when people are just not a good fit. Either A, it's just something you don't support, or B, they're just crazy, or I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I think anyone knows what I'm talking about. And this is not just a tech thing. Any entrepreneur who's dealt business, like, yeah, I don't understand that customer. They just have the craziest way of dealing with everything, and they're chaos all the time. And by bringing you in, you either decide you can manage their chaos or you can't manage their chaos, or they just don't like paying bills. And that's been sometimes as simple as that. Easy way to break up a client. You don't pay bills. We've got a client, more than one, that we told them they have to buy hours ahead of time. That's where they're at. They don't like that answer, but they do it because the people in management at the lower levels completely understand the top level people don't pay the bills. They've even joked with how they don't pay any bills. Everything is a game to them of what they can do with not paying. So it's not that we don't deal with them. We just make them buy the hours ahead of time. And when they tell us no, we tell them we won't service it. And then they call my friend's IT company and he says, "What do you owe Tom money?" That's how he answers the phone with them when they call it. Because they know we service it, and they didn't like that answer. It was funny, and they don't realize we're friends. And the other IT guy must be, yeah, they're calling me again. They didn't want to buy hours, did they? I'm like, nope. He goes, I told him the same thing you said.
I've find a few, and you have to do that.
Yeah,
some refuse to pay. It's like, look, buy a block of hours, or it's not worth our time to look after it.
It's really
in a business. It costs me money to look after you that way.
Yeah, we're not ever turning down to help people. It's not that we're trying to put roadblocks, but especially when companies are not in desperate situations, they're in very good economic situation for them. Some companies just make it a game out of not paying you. I don't really understand that mentality. I've watched business owners that just have these weird dynamics, like they think it's a power move to just not pay a bill for some extended period of time. To me, that's just a big disruption. This is one of the reasons the contractors like working with us. They know even before I am paid, my contractors, they get their deposits up front, they get their full pay when the job is completed, and then we take care of the billing on the back end to the client. And that relationship we've had, and we've had one particular business that dragged their feet for 9 months on a large wiring project we did. They dragged it forever, but all the contractors are like, wow, you still get paid on that? And I said, no, you are, but we're not. And this is
I remember seeing your video about that.
Yes, it was called the worst cabling project ever. I think it took us like 9 months to a year to get paid.
Yeah, it dragged out for a while, didn't it?
Yep, they just dragged out because they thought it was a game because they paid the majority of the money, but then the last like 10,000 of the deposit, it was like close to a $200,000 job right around there. The last 10,000 they trickled out in like $100 increments just to do it. Like, come on, guys, if you can afford to pay me that kind of money for this big project, but then you'll trickle out the last little bits over a few months just to do it, like, they're a huge company. That amount of money from scale and proportion of their company was but we won't do business with them anymore because they think things are a game, and that's the attitude they took on it.
I wouldn't myself. But that's a good point to bring up in a video, that if any one of your clients holds like 80% of your revenue, then you need to fix that. Otherwise, they'll end up kind of controlling you as well.
Yeah, that you end up with if they have some problems, and especially the pandemic's turned some industries upside down. So even if you're a company and IT service provider and you've narrowed down into I service this vertical, that puts you at risk if that vertical itself has a problem. And no one's seen the pandemic coming, but I knew people we lost some of our entertainment clients. We had clients that were specifically around entertainment venues, and they took a hard hit. One was a limo rental company. No limos got rented for a long time, and they had no way to weather the storm. They did booking. So you have to be careful. I mean, the ground can shift if you're diverse. You just have less likelihood of that directly impacting your business. It's hard to do. It's easy to say these words. I always remind people when I say this, I'm coming from 18 years of experience versus I know the reality of where I got, and it was hard to do. So hopefully I'm leaving you some advice, but I never want to imply, oh, just do this, man, you'll have it figured out in a minute.
Yeah, no, it's just, obviously we've been doing it for a while, so how people react to running new companies kind of a bit different to how we would. I've fired clients and they've actually turned around to me, and if you're watching this, it'll be funny. They've actually turned around to me and said, I think you're out of order for trying to fire us. I'm like, look, you won't take any of my advice. You won't put security precautions in place. They don't want to do 2FA because it's inconvenient. One of them was trying to install hunters on the systems, and like, it's not really a big deal if we get breached. I'm like, this kind of ain't the client I want.
If they're not aligned and they're just going to be problems, you just kind of move on with them. I think this one's a fun one here is how do you stay up to date with the industry? Because that's a fun topic right there. Obsessively
for my own benefit.
What's that?
For my own benefit, this one, so I can see where you're getting all your info from.
Yes. Now I've actually, remind me if you don't see it in my forums, you can find it in there. I made a list of a lot of the news sites I go through and just kind of round robin through. A lot of them are curated on Reddit as well. That between Reddit and kind of a list of news sites, and I combine that with podcasts, and I compiled that whole list. And I'm going to do, because 2022 is coming up, so I'm going to do like a 2022 edition, because there's probably a few different things I'm listening to now that not too much different, but to name all those sources, I listen to all my podcasts at usually 1.8 or 2x, depending. I actually, if someone's talking fast and they have a Australian or UK accent, I may have to slow it down a little bit, but for the most part, the majority of the podcasts I can listen to at a pretty fast rate. And it's one of those things. I pop the podcast, pop some headphones, go for a walk, and push all that information into my head. And it's helpful to kind of do that. Sometimes I'll leave it on if it's, a few ones, maybe I'll listen to it somewhat in the background where I'm less intently listening to it. But it's kind of this constant feed of information balance that I try to do. So I'll pick up things out of it, pause it, listen to it again. It's not easy being aware of all the different things all the time. There's so much happening. It's something I've been doing though for the first time I got obsessed with news reading and stuff was Slashdot 20 years ago.
Wow.
So I have been, from the early days of Slashdot, then I had a Palm Pilot, and there was a really cool, someone wrote a custom news reader for the Palm Pilot back around 2000. I had that on there. So you connect the Palm Pilot to a dock and it would preload RSS feeds that you defined into it. So I could have all my news articles and summaries of them all in RSS. Like my news obsession for reading tech stuff and being up to date on it goes back 20 years. So,
I think mine used to involve sitting in IRC channels just to be nosy and see what was going on in the world.
Oh, I belong to so many modern IRC channels, as in Slack. I belong to Slack channels, Discord channels, with different groups of people. And I do the same thing. I peruse them when I get up in the morning and see if there's something I need to comment on or something I'm interested in. That'll be a separate list that I might make as well, of just some of the ones that you can join publicly. I belong to a couple that are private only, but they're because they're with products I use or customers or companies that we engage with regularly, we're inside some of their Slack channels as part of the team that helps stuff with them. But there's also news going on in there, so to speak, especially when there's security groups and there's things like Log4j, a hot topic right here in December of 2021.
Yeah, this has been a nightmare recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the say keeping up with the news and stuff, I appreciate the fact that you share so much openly.
Yes.
Like you Reddit stuff, it was like, these are the channels that I go through. And I actually followed them myself, and there was a lot on there that I wasn't familiar with. Obviously, everybody's familiar with RMSP. It's kind of a fire channel most of the time.
Yeah, the weekly debates of something silly in there, but overall, I think it's a pretty good channel. Any one of the channels you go into, when the bar to entry is join this subreddit or join this Facebook group, you end up with a large number of people from I'm starting my MSP, I'm thinking about starting my MSP, to I've had my MSP and we're managing 1 million endpoints. Like there's every variety in there. So you get a mixed bag of questions from beginner to some really advanced questions. But I think that's kind of fun. It becomes a little bit of noise in there sometimes, but filtering through the noise.
You get to see multiple people's points of view, and from the smaller guys to the bigger guys. And if the bigger guys are sharing things, that's good for the rest of us as well.
Oh yeah. And that's one of those things where some gatekeeping. Me and Brett seen and someone had commented like they wanted to curate some of the bigger MSPs, but not too big. And when someone said not too big, I'm like, why? I want to see that MSP that has grown to figure out how to do it and has 100 employees. They've got a process, a procedure that allows them to scale to 100. My process is, could they scale to 100? Yeah, but I bet they look different. And I want to know what the differences are between the process procedures I use now. So I always welcome learning from someone like that. That's been my attitude. I think it helps me grow and stay sane about things, or maybe makes me decide that maybe I don't want to have 100 employees. There's either way. At least I get to see some inside perspective from those people. I gain a lot of insight. I have personal friends I go have a drink with sometimes that have MSPs that are substantially different and substantially bigger than mine. I see the good and bad from my perspective of what they do, what I like about what they do, what I don't like, because it's just not something I feel like doing or want to do. But it's interesting to me. It's still a great conversation, and always keeping my eyes open at their perspectives, because one of them, they really don't want to do what I do. They're like, you do a bunch of consulting work, you just kind of turn chaos into money. Like they're contract only. You can't do something with them that's not on signed contract for 1 year with renewals and terms. They're very rigid, but then again, they're very happy about this and they're doing well. So who's to say they're wrong?
There's a lot of companies that do that. There's a lot of companies that work that way that won't do like project work or break fix work or anything. I mean, I will if the company's all right and they pay.
Yeah, and they farm the project work out to us, so we got a happy relationship. So,
but they have a
what motivates you? That's a fun one. What motivates you makes you get up in the morning.
It's hard work doing this.
Yeah. So what motivates me is going to be, I just like solving problems. For me, jumping into tech, solving problems just gets me excited. That was it's that puzzle. It's the, how can I take this? How can I put something around this? How can I solve it in an innovative or interesting way? That's one of the reasons I don't do so many cookie cutter solutions. And I'm that odd man out looking at things like XCP-ng or other open source tools. I've been an open source advocate for a very long time. I've been involved in some of the hacking community for a very long time. I don't like a normal, boring solution. Anyone can just slap a Cisco system in. That's pretty much cookie cutter. What are the other solutions that aren't just the top 3 brands that we see everywhere in any particular vertical or any particular category of IT? So, networking, well, you got to go with Cisco or HP Aruba or, Palo Alto, and that's it. There's no other options. I've always liked looking at those different options, for better or worse. It gets me it's much more intriguing to solve it in a different way, to come up with something interesting. That's a lot of what motivates me, is what's new, what's interesting, what might be this innovative way to do it. And, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm always right about the innovative way, but things like XCP-ng have proven to be a absolute massive amount of deployments, like how fast that company has grown. They were one of the technologies I looked at from day one. I'm like, this is so cool. And everyone's like, oh, it's just some toy, open source toy, to that 2100 server migration I alluded to earlier. That was all XCP-ng.
Yeah, it's really
large. Yeah, we've seen large scale companies deploying it. And granted, it does have a history because it's, they're able to take over Citrix systems. So Citrix did make sense, or were relatively popular, but they've taken it to the next level with that combination. So it's one of those innovative solutions. PF Sense. The PF Sense is used by some of the largest companies. Companies don't always disclose what's using it, but I've talked about this before. It is one of those things I thought was cool. I've been talking about it for 7 or 8 years now. Some of my first YouTube videos were about PF Sense, and here we are. It's still a really popular firewall. It is used in a lot of data centers and HA configurations. So yeah, it's a solid, large product and one of those out of the box, not normal solutions where everyone just says, well, just use this or just use that. And it's proven quite effective.
PF Sense is an amazing product. I've used it myself.
Yeah,
for years. Before I used PF Sense, I used to use FreeBSD for routers. And then to make it easy for my clients, tried PF Sense. So the clients had a GUI that they could log in and change some things if they wanted to, even though I tried not to let them do that. And I've never looked back ever since. It's just solid for everything.
It's
people
proven
want
to be a really good product.
VPN.
Yeah. Now, the fun ones are questions 13 and 14. I'll roll into one, which is how did the business impacted by COVID-19 and what are the biggest challenges for pandemic has brought up to you? It's, the mass confusion was the really hard part. I think this was global. We aren't well prepared to deal with global pandemics. And that's not just a United States thing, although we were quite ill prepared for a developed nation for this.
It don't happen too often.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen too often. So no one's really good at this. So a lot of confusion, and we had so many failures in leadership, not giving the clearest answers, and that still kind of persists to some level today. But it's once we started out the confusion, and understanding what the rules should be and coming up with our own rules. We are lucky to be working in tech because the transition we had to help a lot of our clients with, of course, is how do we get our clients remote? And so tech has actually done really well. The last, this is one of the big problems, so to speak, that you see repeated is like, well, the tech companies grew a lot of wealth because any company that was well suited to deal with online ordering and things like that, they were already lined up in position. Oh crap, no one can go anywhere. I guess we just buy everything online. We get our services online. It suddenly made people think differently. And once you can start putting all the users at home, anyone who had solutions, such as we do for building out VPNs and stuff like that, something we were consulting on before the pandemic, our services became more in demand to help do this migration. So once you had a strategy to deal with it and people knew you were the one to call, you instantly were the solution provider again. So overall, it's been, I don't want to say it's anything positive about the pandemic, but it's positive in terms of like growth in technology. The pandemic is still tragic and terrible, and it's still unmitigated disaster to some extent right now here in December. But overall, we've kind of managed to come up with the options to let our employees, because it's kind of the next question in there a little bit, the flexible work options. We still are a split company. Everyone that wants to work in the office gets to work in the office. The people that want to work remotely work remotely. We came up with a split of who wants to be here and who wants to be from home. And I've let it be. And even the new hire options are the same. Matter of fact, the nicest thing is it's opened up the flexibility when we want to expand and hire people. There's no thought of geography anymore. It's like, cool, you can be in Indiana, you can be in California. Matter of fact, California is really convenient because it's a few time zones over. So you can actually answer the phones later, but still get off work at a normal 5 o'clock time. But that happens to be, that allows you to answer the phones even later here. And we've used a few contractors in California for things it's just really convenient because like after hours for a company here is 5, usually like 5 o'clock, they close. Well, the California person is like, well, that's easy for me. I'm a few hours ahead. So I can work on things and still be off work at 5 and have servers migrated and things updated.
Yeah. It's, I wouldn't say it was obviously good over the last 12 months. I mean, I've probably sold more laptops in the last 12 months than I've sold in the last 18 years, to be honest.
Yeah.
We went through all our clients. We went up setting VPNs up and everything, and we didn't charge them for it because when it was over, we still wanted them to be clients.
Yeah.
So we set them up for them. Obviously, they had to pay for the laptops. We didn't give them the laptops. We'd lost a couple of customers, like over 10 million turnover, had lost and gone under because of it, just because of the vertical that it was in. And as you mentioned before, a friend of mine owns an IT company, and he catered specifically for the hospitality. And as it happens, that company's not going anymore. He went under.
Yeah, that industry got hit hard. Yeah, that industry got hit hard. It's not been kind to them for sure.
No, it hasn't. It's good to see companies offering flexible working for staff, though. So, do you want to work from home? Do you want to work from the office? Some people prefer the office. Some people prefer from home. One of the great aspects of our job is it doesn't really matter where you sat. You can answer the phone and remote onto somebody's computer from anywhere.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of companies, and we mentioned Huntress earlier. They're a near example. When they launched around 2015, when Kyle put that company together, they planned from the get-go to be a remote-only company. And because of that, they weathered really well through the pandemic. People are like, well, how do you manage things remotely? Like, that's the way we designed the company from day one. They wanted to build a diverse team remotely. They knew it was one of the challenges in some of the more technical cybersecurity side is finding really good talent. And if you restrict it to a geography, you just added one more parameter. So I like the fact in tech that it's very open like that. And we're seeing more industries. My friend's wife works in accounting, and she does well with doing remote. That's how her company does too. The whole team of accountants that handle the business are all working remotely, which they've always done that, which I thought was kind of cool. So more and more companies are going, oh, I guess we can do that. We had one of our clients who's an accounting firm. He really pivoted. He says, boy, this opened up so I can find more people that can prepare corporate business taxes. He's got more employees now than beginning of the pandemic because he said, wait a minute, why do we have an office if we can do this remotely? And then after the first year of the pandemic, the second year, he's like, I can just hire someone from anywhere. This is cool. And so he does. And we've actually seen him expand his business directly after it because he says that once he had the thought change, he's like, well, this is easy.
Yeah, a lot of companies weren't in a position to offer remote working, but now pretty much every company on the planet is in a position to offer flexible working. So that's a good thing, and it obviously helps with staff and health and stuff, and they don't have to travel for 2 hours to get into work and 2 hours home, so you're not getting home till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Where do you see yourself in 5 years then?
Oh, I don't do the best 5-year vision planning on stuff. I do what I do now because I enjoy it. And as I don't enjoy something, I may pivot a little bit. I say it that way because if you would have asked me when I was doing a wedding photographer, you're going to keep doing this? I said, yeah, but I did get burned out being a wedding photographer. I doubt I'm going to get burned out in tech in general. Maybe specifically, I quit doing a aspect of it because I don't want to do it. For an example, that's going to be, we did have a retail store and kind of a little bit of history in there. For a little while, I had a electronics repair company called Suburban Electronics. That was from 2005 until 2009. That was a thing. Then I also had a retail store referred to as PC Pickup. So anyone who finds that random branding scattered around somewhere from years ago, that was my retail location. So we always did this business corporate. That's the beginning. And I bored with it is maybe one way to describe it. Just didn't feel like something I wanted to do is deal with retail customers anymore. I didn't really have the staffing for it. I had trouble maintaining it as a profitable venture. And someone said something kind of harsh, but very correct to me. I was complaining about something and said, Tom, if you just complain about retail, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You're not good at it. And I'm like, I said, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm going to close it. And they go, what? Yeah. They thought, they're like, no, you should do it differently. I'm like, differently? No, I can't come up with differently. I can't come up with a process in my head. I'm going to stop doing it. And I said, I said, thank you. You're right. You are right. I shouldn't be complaining about it. Why am I complaining about it? It's something I'm trying to do on the side here. I have not come up with a method, a process. I haven't come up with the right people to manage the retail side. So we closed it down. That was in 2018, only a few years ago. So it's not that long ago that I closed it, but it was one of those things that, hey, I had to admit defeat. I'm not good at it. The market changed. I haven't been able to change with the market to make that a viable business for me. So yeah. So when I say, what am I going to do in 5 years? I probably, because I love media creation, I can imagine myself continuing doing media creation, where that takes me in different aspects, a lot of the same that I'm doing now, but I also do so many broad things, maybe narrow it down, but that's a hard one. I also don't plan on getting rid of my business because one of the things that keeps coming up to me and people have commented on is my knowledge isn't just of technology, but my knowledge is of deploying it. So sure, anyone can talk about the Unify this or some network switch, but knowing what it's like deploying it in the real world only comes from if I'm doing some type of engagement in the real world. I got an entire team. My next stop from here is to meet my team that's doing another large deployment in a warehouse. I want to go hang out with them for a little while, see what they're doing. And I'll talk about the parts they're using, and it's the insight and the back and forth, my hands-on, I'm going to get with that project. That leads me to understand, like, all right, this is what we did. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. And this is what my team thought of it. And then I follow up with the deployments. Like I did a follow-up video on after we deployed 300 Unifies in a network that has like 5,000 people connected to it.
300.
What does that look like? That's not something you get by testing it on my desk here. You can't. There's a difference between I hooked a couple phones up to it and did a speed test versus, all right, what did it look like after you deployed it across 6 buildings on a large tied together network with thousands of people on it? That's a different animal altogether.
Completely. It takes a lot of planning. I use Unify because I watched one of your videos and you recommended doing it. And that's why we started doing Unify. It's been solid. Rarely have any problems with it. Just works. Put it in and it's all managed centrally from one dashboard. It really works well.
Yeah. The piece of advice is always a hard one too. The big problem is if you're starting out now, and there was a good article written by Cory Doctorow, and it's about how to self-publish a book. And I thought it was great what he said in great humility. He says, none of the advice I would give you to start out as an author is relevant in 2021 because I started 20 years ago. My knowledge of starting, and the same problem, I bought newspaper ads, I bought things like that. So there are some advice that's hard for me to give that is like that one piece, because some of the things I say that worked when I started, or even you started your company almost 20 years ago, is going to be different. But the things that are going to hold true are a few things we talked about, like how do you get out and meet people? That is huge. Get out of your bubble. Don't make some weird assumption that just by putting up a fancy website like everybody else, business will just show up. It still takes getting out there and meeting people. It still to this day, with all the YouTube income and all the inbound leads that come in for people knowing me from YouTube, we still are out there meeting people. The job we're doing, the one I mentioned I'm going to go to next, that is completely a handshake, in-person, meet someone type deal that we did all this on for all the work we're doing for that client. So yeah, that's still something you have to do. That's not changed over the last 20 years. There's more marketing opportunities available online, but they're not always the right ones if you're going to go into the B2B side. So
you can't meet people.
Yeah, you still got to meet people.
Get out there and do it. I'd actually changed that question from where did you see yourself in 5 years? It originally said, would you retire if you was in a position to do so?
Oh,
so you answered that kind of thing anyway, didn't you?
No, I don't plan on retiring. There's no.
I
need something to do all the time, so I don't want to go stir crazy.
So, last thing I had, because we've got to wrap up, because I said it'd take like 30 minutes to do this, and we've been at it for
Well,
if you was going to write a book about yourself, how would you name it?
I don't mind when people do Q&A like this and me answering questions about myself. I just don't lead with it. So I feel weird about writing a book about it. I have no idea. That's a tough one. And I'll be honest on it. Like could I picture myself writing a book on a technical topic, on a process, procedure, how to get something done or something training? My friend Jay from Learn Linux TV, he's wrote several books on Ubuntu, for example. Yes, all those things. Yes, I could picture writing a book on me. I don't ever feel, I've done something interesting enough that ever deserved a book, because I'm just some guy floating around throwing some knowledge out there on YouTube right now, or maybe I did some fun things. But that's a tough one. So I wouldn't know what to name it. And I've never tried to be like writing a book about me. It just feels really weird. And things like that. So I don't mind doing interviews and where people ask me Q&A like this, but the writing a book myself seems, I don't know. So I can't picture what I would call it. Why would you read this book? That would be a fun title. Why would you read this book? Maybe clickbait.
I wouldn't know how to answer that myself, but I mean, it's a shame. Like, God, we've been doing this 20 years. I mean, we started off like with dial-up modems and bulletin boards, and the era that I saw the 2600 t-shirt that you had on, and I've got 2600 magazines sat on the shelf over there.
A bunch of them over by my shelf too.
And like that era that we came from, it was just, it's a shame people won't go through that anymore. Just technology's changed too much, but it was an interesting area.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. Maybe talking about history might be fun at some point, and putting a book together on I was there and stuff I dealt with. I actually enjoy, there's like the gaming historian. There's a couple YouTube channels that break down some of the history of things. I find that really interesting. I like the 8-bit guy. He covers some of the history of those old computers and things like that. There's like a few YouTube channels. And I've thought about, like, that's a fun thing to write about, because I was involved in or some of the early days of technology, that I have some still knowledge of it. And it's still interesting.
The network, lab manager.
Yeah. So I think there's value in writing about some of that and documenting it. It feels way too off topic to put on my YouTube channel. So it's like, where do I do that? And where do I do it before I forget about all of it? So
eliminating BNC connectors and
Twin-ax networks and Twin-ax BNC and setting all that up. I set up the old Muxer, we called it. I think that's what they're still called. It's basically a dial-up modem that takes in, it took in 4 serial ports in, tied them to a single dial-up modem, and then brought 4 serial ports out. It was one of the first tech jobs that I had working for
type of thing.
Yeah, it was so they could run point of sale terminals. So we had a giant bank of modems that was actually an old bank. The company I worked for had bought a bank as the building, and they used the safe for tape storage for all the backups, which I thought was cool. And they had a series of Acer Alto servers running Unix. Wow. And the Acer Alto Unix had a series of modem banks on there, and we would set up the serial ports so that people could dial in with the modem banks, and then it would go to the different retail store locations. And that was some of the early stuff I played with in the 90s. That was my job. It was
computers off RS-232 cables and stuff in the past. That's just how things changed so much. I'm gonna head it here because I've kind of got to get home. My team's going to be in the dog and things. Thank you for doing this.
No problem.
It's like I say, it's been good. You are somewhat of a celebrity. I do follow your channel myself, as well as a few others that you do. I really appreciate the opportunity for having you.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, and take care.